Hello, everyone. The DDA welcomes you to another webinar on Employment First. We have a topic today on community-based day services. Our featured presenter is Sara Murphy. She's from Transcend Inc. And before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options for listening to the webinar: by computer and by phone. And if you have trouble hearing, you may try switching by clicking on the appropriate button on the webinar panel. One says computer audio, the other one says phone call, so you can go between those. There are handouts for the webinar today, and you can find them in the handout section of the panel to the right of your screen. They can also be emailed for those of you that are on the phone today. We will be recording the webinar, and we will send the link in a follow-up email that will go out to all who registered. Questions can be typed in the question box in the webinar panel. However, we will answer your questions periodically through the webinar and at the end. If you have additional questions, please use email to Stacy Jones or me. I guess now we can turn it over to Stacy Jones, our statewide Career and Employment Services Coordinator. Hey,
Thanks,
Stacy.
Donna. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm glad to see so many people signed in on a gorgeous Friday afternoon. So thank you for not playing hooky. I'm glad everybody's able to join us today at this later time. Usually we're at 10, so this is a little different for us. This is part one of our three-part series on a new day for day services. This is a subject that many of you have asked about and requested over the last year, so I don't want to hold us up. I have the pleasure today of introducing you to Sara Murphy. She's a national subject matter expert with the Employment First State Leadership Mentor Program. Sara is a senior associate at Transcend Inc. and is the director of Worklink, a nationally recognized employment service for job seekers with disabilities, and I'm sure she'll talk more in depth about that. She has a degree in behavioral disabilities and special education and a master's degree in special education and rehabilitation. For the past 30 years, Sara has focused on school to work and employment for individuals with disabilities, and she has extensive experience in transition, direct services, customized employment, employer engagement, and with 30 years experience, I'm sure there's much more that I left out, but she'll fill you in on all that. And also, I just want to share that I've had the pleasure of working with Sara in the past, so I know that she's extremely knowledgeable about not only subject matter in general, but she's also familiar with the systems in Maryland. So Sara, thank you again for being with us today, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, as Stacy said, I am part of Transcend, which is based in Rockville, Maryland, and I have the pleasure of working in San Francisco, though, and it's a glorious day here as well. The program that I'm running is Transcend's direct service program, and the name it's called Worklink, and it's a 100% community-based service that provides both employment and non-work services for people with disabilities, significant disabilities. And we have been doing this for about 20 years. When I first started, I've worked for Transcend for 21 years, and I can hardly believe time flies. When I started, we were doing technical assistance and training. We weren't really doing direct service. We were doing kind of project-based direct service on occasion, working with organizations and providers, but we weren't actually doing it ourselves. And a lot of the presentation materials were getting kind of old, and the photos were getting kind of old, and I said to Rich and George at the time, we should do direct service. How can we talk the talk and not walk the walk, and it would really help us and really inform our our training and our research if we actually applied the principles and saw kind of what are the successful strategies and tools to kind of enable people to do best practice in employment and community-based services. And of course, they turned around and said, well, okay, go start one. And that was probably the last time I opened my mouth at Transcend, because ever since, well, actually, it's been really wonderful. We have been running this program, and we see it as our little laboratory. It's a smaller program, which is good. We serve about 40, 50 people a year. Many of them are in our services. Our services are ongoing and long term for some, and for others we fade and fade back. We have supported employment services, day services, and competitive employment placement services as well. So the program really is all about kind of trying best practice and finding tools and methods that work that we can then share with providers. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to work with Maryland and to give you some of the tools and strategies that we're using to get people into community-based settings. So with no further ado, oh, there it goes. Today's topic, again, as Stacy said, we're going to be doing 3 webinars. Hopefully all of them will be really beneficial for providers. We're going to try and really focus in on the methods and the tools so that you'll have things that you can actually utilize and move forward within your organization. So I hope you find these beneficial. But today's is kind of the kickoff, and it's all about inclusion and employment and how to use day services to do that. So our agenda is, we're going to review very quickly just some of the, Maryland is establishing new waivers. We're going to talk very quickly about the purpose of those and how to utilize those to create meaningful services. And then we're going to look at what meaningful services actually are and how to build those connections in those communities and to really gun for inclusion, not just integration. And the difference between those two. We'll also talk about, how to use community resources and sites as teaching environments, and what does that look like. And then one of the things I think that's, to me, is incredibly close to my heart is that we can really use day services to put people on a pathway to support it, to community employment. When we first started, when I first set this program up, it was Worklink was the name, and it was totally focused on supported employment, and that was the only service that we offered. So we established it, and it was just a supported employment program. And we quickly realized that there's more to life than just work. As we all know, hopefully, that people have, especially people with more significant disabilities, and that house of cards built around them, that we really need to support them on all levels and create kind of wraparound services that can get at both, the employment and non-work. And so we went back and started a day service program, a community-based day service, after we realized that that it was a big gap and a big hole in our in people's lives. People were still, even though they had a great job, were still isolated and not doing anything but going to work, and they don't initiate reaching out and getting together with their friends and things like that. So that's what we decided we were going to be focusing on and teaching them how to do. So so we started our day services program, and it has really contributed greatly to the success of the individuals in the program, and really helped us to help people. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about this, really helping people to put a toe in the water, and really build that self-confidence in community settings, so that they're not afraid to be out there, and in fact they enjoy themselves in community settings and really do blossom. So we're also going to discuss ways to really foster friendships and facilitate natural supports and encourage that independence and self-confidence, and help people not to be reliant on programs, but to, we kind of consider ourselves services, not programs, so that we can provide the supports and assistance people need. But as they get more and more confident and can stand on their own 2 feet, then we start to fade our services. So and for some it may not, we may not fade completely. For others, we may. So integration and employment, I think you've probably heard a lot about this because of the Center for Medicaid Services settings rule. I think a lot of programs are really looking at how to provide services in integrated community-based ways, and it is a totally different ballgame than facility-based services. So it takes a whole different kind of mindset to really look at how to utilize and manage community-based services, because kind of there's no box, and there's no, you're not locked into anything. The whole, as we like to say, the whole world is your oyster. So how do you make sense of this, and how do you create services that are person-centered and structured enough that people can really learn in community settings? So we'll be talking a lot today. And Maryland, the state of Maryland, as well as other states across the country, are now looking at rewriting their waivers to support inclusion and providing supports and services in community-based ways. So I'm sure Stacy has informed me that you have lots of resources around what the waivers are coming, the waivers that are coming down the pike, and what states are trying to do is to really create a way that providers can offer a wide array of supports in integrated settings, and to build options for people so that you can get at employment and discovery and all of the things that people need to be put on a pathway to integrated employment in the community. So one of the things I wanted to really look at is it is a new day for day services, and if we look at day services as a way to really support individuals in non-work and employment, it really is an amazing tool, and if used correctly. So day services need to be, in my opinion, provided in integrated community-based services, because that's what the skills that we're trying to teach people are actually utilized in the world. So it's best to teach in the world where these skills are going to be needed. The other thing that we see is that getting people included and integrated into their communities really does come home in many different ways, and really leads to happiness and meaningful lives. The other thing about day services is they have to be purposeful. They have to be goal-oriented. It's not just as we like to say, it's not just supported loitering. We're not going to the park. We're not just going to go to be in the community. When I look at myself, I don't just go out into the community to be in the community. So we have to stop seeing this as activities and outings and see it as skill-based and exploration and other things. So the expectation is that everyone will work, and we kind of hang our hat on it. So we do supported employment, as I said, and competitive employment placements, and they're all individual placements. So we are working with people that everybody has a job that is theirs. We don't do any group services. We don't do any contract services. Everybody's directly hired at or above minimum wage. The other thing about our services and really great day services is that that as a person becomes more confident, as their confidence increases and their skills increase, that the goal is to start fading services, kind of like job coaching in the world versus at a job site. So one of the things that we look at is, if someone is able, obviously there are some individuals who, because of, the behavioral or medical issues, or they can't cross a street safely, those individuals, obviously are going to need support for the long term. So, those services wouldn't fade. But what we would be trying to teach is self-reliance and trying to versus independence. So can we make them more self-reliant? Can we teach them, to feed themselves? Can we teach them to transfer? Can we teach them, to do, to communicate and to make choices? Those are the kinds of things that we would focus on for those individuals, and not really be looking at independence. But what we like to do is really set the bar high and see if we can get there. So, independence in the community is one of the things that we really gun for. The other thing that day services need to be is individualized and person-centered. And we like to say not even just person-centered, but person-driven. So the person is determining what their services are and what supports and assistance and where they want to be and with who. So we provide small group services for our day services. We don't have a rate that allows us to do one-on-one, although there's a new waiver in California that we're going to probably be applying for and getting vendorized for, that allows us to do what we call tailored day. So that would be a one-on-one situation, that day service. So we encourage people to create and to use those waivers, create the new waivers very creatively. We like having small group services available because people want to see their friends. And if we can create situations where people are out in the community in small groups with their friends, they learn that they can do this, and they learn to actually go to movies and do things without Worklink, without support and services. So we try to do what we call heterogeneous small groups. So we have a third, and a third. So a third of the individuals in our program have more significant disabilities. Because we aren't facility-based at all, we can't work with people who are medically fragile, but we do have people with more significant support needs, and people with behavioral issues in the program. And so those are the people that we provide door-to-door support for, and they are always with a staff member. And then a third of the program is people with more moderate support needs, who over the course of time we would expect that they would be able to pick things up and be able to do things independently, but they might need a significant amount of training and support initially. And then the other third are people who just need just need a little support, people who just to get started. And those are the individuals that, of course, we're gunning for, total independence in the community. In Maryland, you will have, as of July 2019, hourly billing, which also is really, really important for individualized and person-centered services, because it allows you to do more than one service type in a day. So we have hourly billing out here, and it allows us to do, people can go to the gym or take a class in the morning, and then we can plop them into our supported employment program in the afternoon for their job, or they have a job coach in the afternoon that's through our supported employment or employment services. So it allows us to really get at both of those needs, both non-work and employment. Because before, if you were locked into kind of that 6-hour day, and it tended to be, kind of Monday through Friday, you couldn't really bust up the day, and you couldn't get at having them in, an individual placement in the community. So hourly rates are amazing, and yes, they are a little more of an accounting issue, but what we see is it really, really is beneficial, because it does allow you to cobble together services and supports that really do address the person's need, and you can really tailor them to fit what the individuals want. So the other thing that we say about our day services is they're a pathway to employment and inclusion. We use community-based volunteer work sites to really teach kind of a work ethic, and to help people understand, what is work, what does it mean, and also what kinds of work sites, and what kinds of jobs do people do. So we use these community volunteer sites, and we also have a project search program that we kind of refer to as our boot camp. So if people want to work in really professional settings and don't have an experience doing that, or they think they want to work full time, project search is ours is at Kaiser Permanente, and it's a 4-hour work shift, so a pretty intensive opportunity to see what that feels like. So pathways to employment, and again, to really use day services to build those villages and get people connected to their community. So inclusion versus integration is the whole goal. We don't just want to be in the community. We don't want to be next to people. We want to be valued by people. So it's more than just going out to buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It's really about building connections and becoming part of your community and valued by your community. So what this really requires is that we go routinely to the same places and to engage with people in really meaningful ways, and not just, as I said before, purchasing a cup of coffee or going to the park. We're not just out there using community services or sites. We're actually participating, and one of the big things that we really stress is that people, in order to be valued, people have to give back. It's in societies, if you play a valued role, so through working, volunteering, or helping people, it really changes people's impressions and the of one themselves. That I'm not being helped. I'm a helper, but it also helps the community see people with disabilities contributing, and it is a total win-win. So inclusion versus integration is something that you should really bear in mind, and really, again, stressing that inclusion is what we're gunning for. So one of the things we when we first started doing day services, all the people, when I came in and said, I think, we need to start day services, because we were starting to see that people were lonely, and people weren't, even if they were working, they were still not, their jobs weren't changing their lives, and it wasn't, there were all these things that I was just like, this is just not enough, this supported employment. We need to use day services. And you would think that I said we need to shoot the Pope, because my staff at the time just went completely ballistic, and we're like, we're not going to go sit in the park. How, it's, what don't you understand about Worklink? It's work. We're all about work. And I said, well, what we really need is to really focus on meaningful lives, and not just employment, but the whole package. And so I said, we can do services, but they have to be meaningful. And people were like, well, okay. And then they kind of came around, and we decided to do this. But and I kept saying to people, so is it meaningful? And they were like, what? Sarah, what does meaningful mean? And of course, I didn't really know. I couldn't really define it. So I looked it up on my phone, as we do, and it said significance, purpose, and value. And those are the things that we really hang our hat on. So any service we provide to someone, it has to be significant to either them or society. It has to be purposeful or outcome oriented. Why is this person learning this, or what are they learning here? Why are they going to this site? Or it has to bring value to them, or to be valued by them, or things that they want to do or wish to learn, or valued by the community. So contributing and volunteering and helping. So we use this. It's posted in our office, and we live by this definition. So what actually makes life meaningful? And when you think about it, what makes our lives meaningful? It's family and friends, and having opportunity to socialize and to be part of a community or a family is and to have friends is so important. Employment and being productive is something that is incredibly meaningful. So money and self-worth are two things that people, the reasons why people work. And if you think about other reasons, employment is just an amazing way to connect to the world and to make people feel like a contributor and productive. And it is so important for mental health reasons as well as monetary. So employment makes life meaningful. Engagement in the community, as I said before, just being part of something and being respected is really important, and contributing is again something that really makes life meaningful. And then the other thing that we look at is having a happy home and a sanctuary that feels like your house, and reflects your personality, and has opportunities for hobbies and other things that you can do for entertainment beyond watching TV. So we look at do people have things to do at home, and can they take care of their home, and can they tend a garden? Do they have pets? Do they if they like purple, is their room purple? So we really look at having a happy home that feels like it's your place. And a place that you can go to really relax. The other thing we look at is health. We have a lot of people who are, pre-diabetic or diabetic, and we look at, getting exercise and being healthy. So nutrition, going to the gym, all of those things are very, very important. The other thing that makes life meaningful is choices and having real options, not just prescribed, plug in, you can have this box or that box. These are the services we offer. We don't say that to people. We ask them, what do you want? What do you want in your life, and how do we make that happen for you? So it's a very different approach to services. And again, it's not a program. We're not looking at programming people. We're really looking at helping them to figure out what they need to learn and what they want to learn. So choices and options. And then again, that freedom and independence. Nobody likes being watched by their mother, right? So we try to encourage that independence and that idea that I'm capable of doing this by myself, and it's quite amusing because we teach people to say that, and we use the word independence and talk about it all the time, and people will fire it back at us. I'm doing this independently, or I'm going to do this by myself, and at that point we know they've got it because they're confident and expressing that they want to do it on their own. So community services, again, person-centered, person-driven, purposeful, goal-oriented. We look at, what does the person want to learn or do, and then, what do they need to learn to make that happen? So we look at their dreams and goals, their 3-year goals, and how do we get there? And that's how our services start. So we don't bring people in and tour them around. We say to them, we sit with them and say, what do you want? What would make your life meaningful? What kind of work sounds fun? And we focus on kind of looking at what are the essential skills, both hard and soft, that you need in order to be successful and live kind of a meaningful adult life in today's world. And those are the things that we focus on and try to teach out in the community. The goal again is independence or increased self-reliance. The other thing that we're trying to do is to really build a village and help people to connect and develop friendships beyond paid staff. So we're looking at creating villages and building natural supports and making sure that people are comfortable and known in their neighborhoods and in other places. And then if appropriate, as I said, we fade services in some instances, and for some people our services will be for a lifetime. Our whole goal with our community support services is to really encourage employment, and we do that through, many people with developmental disabilities don't have a lot of life experience to draw from. So you ask them, what do you want to do? And they don't know. So one of the things that we do is they may not have had an opportunity to do much. So we take them out and we explore different things. And did you like that? Did you not like that? And start helping them to develop their voice and to advocate for themselves. And we do that discovery process because one of the things that our program does is we use customized employment for everybody in the program. And so that discovery piece is an important piece. And what we found is we can use our community support services to support our employment services. Before, we were using our employment specialists were having to do all that discovery, and we were making pretty blind placements because we had to do it so quickly, and it wasn't paid. It's supported employment is a milestone, and is paid pretty much once the job starts. So we had to be efficient, and we had to be quick in getting people enrolled and placed. But when we started doing customized employment, you can't cheap out that discovery process because it is the foundation. And really, what we find is it really leads to jobs that fit like a glove and places that people are really going to be successful. So we started using our community support services, our day services, to do discovery activities. So taking people out and having them explore different work options and to really get their hands dirty, not just visiting and watching someone do it, but going a number of times to a volunteer setting, or our project search program, and because when you take someone the first time to a place, they're really discombobulated. They don't kind of know what's going on. They don't. They're just trying to figure everything out. They don't know people's names. They're not comfortable. They're not good at it. So they don't really, it's uncomfortable, and they may not like it the first time. But if you take them again and they start to kind of learn, this is what happens here. This is, I'm starting to meet people, and then they're starting to know my name. I'm starting to know their name, and they start to feel comfortable. And then what we see is, as they learn the skills and become better at them, and more independent, they start to like it. And then we can start asking them, is this something that you like to do? So that discovery and repetition is so necessary for skill building. You can't just go once. So the other thing that we found, again, and as I said earlier, is people don't fit in a box, and they need multiple services. So with our hourly rate and our braided services, we're able to provide that. And what we see is, it's flexible and responsive. It really does allow you to really get at, a person's current situation. And as I said, your hourly rates are going to kick off in July 2019, which will allow you to really look at creating and tailoring day services and employment services for people. So you can start using your day services and supported employment services in the same day and creating those kind of comprehensive wraparound supports as needed. And as I said, you can also start using those hours of support to explore employment options and really build skills and address those non-work needs. when we start to see, where a person, what we like to say is where a person sparkles, and start to see, what are they good at and what do they really enjoy, and what kinds of environments do they like to be in, and we start to come up with a vocational idea. That's when we reach out to doors and initiate a supported employment referral, so that we can then get at placing that person. And one of the really impressive things with this hourly rate is it really blurs the line. It's not a this or that program, and people can access any kind of support that they need, both day and employment. And it allows us to provide, as I said, those small group situations so that we can help people to learn how to be a good friend and how to be in the community with your friends. And in addition to that, we can have one-on-one services to really get at those individual employment settings where kind of that one-on-one service is so important. So it really helped us both programmatically and also, as I said earlier, we were able to do our discovery process using our day services and didn't have to cheap it out and do it fast with our employment services. So our community teams are now charged with kind of figuring out what that person's all about and what they're really good at. And then it plays right into the employment services, and our employment team can really hit the ground running. It also provides opportunity for people to develop that work ethic and a resume, so we can make sure that we're putting them in a position that is really going to fit like a glove, as I said earlier. So our priorities with our day services or with our services are to really maximize independence, to build skills, and to really help people to go to work. So with our hourly rates, all of our services and service plans can be built to order. And what we see is nobody's schedule looks the same. So if people go to work, we can then still continue to support them in the community on weekends or when they're not working. We can also make sure that they don't just sit home once they do have a job. The other thing too that we do is, if people want to come just once or twice a week, they can do that. It really just cracks open a whole new way to look at day services. And you're not having to fill a 6-hour day, because when you start filling time, you get those kind of day wasting activities where well, I guess we'll just do puzzles or something. So we want to make sure that we're not just providing services to keep someone busy, but that we're using them to really teach people skills. So services versus programs, again, our schedules are designed around real life. People don't go into the community Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. So a lot of the stuff that people want to do, and a lot of, especially in rural areas, when community gets together is usually the evening hours or on weekends. So we want to make sure that we're able to provide services and supports around that. The flexible supports that can wrap around a job, again, so that people aren't living isolated lives, and that we can teach them, you're making some money now, let's go look at how, and how that changes your life, and we can work on financial literacy and budgeting skills with them, banking and saving, and what are bills, and how much money are you making, and can you afford to do those things, and helping them to purchase and do what's important to them. The services can also be based on what's meaningful for the individual. And it really focuses on their strengths, and not on what's broken and needs to be fixed, but what are their dreams and goals, and how do we make that happen? The activities and groups are not predetermined, and they're not determined by the staff. We don't put a list up on the wall and these are your choices and sign up. What we do is start from mutual interests or activities that are going to be purposeful for that individual, and and teach them necessary skills, and where do we go and do that. And then we build, we may have to build a group. So what we have is kind of a board that will, somebody says they want to learn to knit, we'll put knitting up there, and we'll put the person's name. And when we have two or three other individuals who are interested in that, we'll actually assign a community instructor to go and develop an opportunity to, where they can learn to knit. And so it's not predetermined. It's not determined by, it's Halloween, we're going to the pumpkin patch. It's not determined by the calendar. It's really, really person specific, and it's purposeful activities. How, what do people need to know, and what do people want to do? So the purpose is, again, for community support services is really that exploration and discovery, and to learn new skills, not just to be in the community and be next to somebody. It's to really develop those social and professional networks and connections that we can then tap for employment opportunities. And fun. It also is a way to really gain independence and self-confidence through day services. And then, that engagement in the community, and what we're trying to do is to build friendships and to build people's villages by giving them a valued role in their neighborhoods and in their cities or towns. So we really look for ways to connect people to others and to their communities. So, and again, the other thing that we use our support services for, community support services for, is to really encourage the idea of employment and to support that process, of that placement process. So really doing that discovery work, and what do you like to do, what are you good at, what are your current skills. Those are the things that our job developers need to know. And before, they had to go figure it out. When they get a referral, they had to go figure it out. They had to get to know that person. They had to really spend a lot of time trying to figure that person out. And it came back to bite us a couple times, because we had one guy that came into the program, and he said, before we offered community support services, he came in and said, I want to work in a garden center, and he and the job developer was like, oh, perfect, we can make that happen. That's easy. So he, out he went, got him a job in a garden center, and the first day, he called me. The job coach called me 15 minutes into the first day and said, Sarah, this isn't going to work. And I, of course, started reading him the riot act and was like, Randy, you get out there. You're a job coach. Teach. You got to teach. Try. And he said, doesn't like dirt. And I said, what? And he said he doesn't like dirt. And I said, oh, that's going to be challenging. And he said he's washing his hands. If he gets dirt on his clothes, he gets. And I said, well, put him in an apron and put gloves on him. And he's like, tried that. Still dirt on the apron. Still, And then he said he found out what's in a manure bag. He's not picking that up. So it was, a really poor, and so we kind of brought him back to the office, and we said, Rob, why? What's going on? Why did you say you wanted to work in a garden center? You're so sure. And he said, my teacher told me I should work in a garden center, and it just got plugged into his head that that's what you do. So, and it wasn't something he enjoyed. It wasn't something he wanted to do. It was just, and he had never done it. So now what we can do is we can actually use our community support services to verify what people say their interests are, and to determine what their current skill levels are, so that we can make better placements, and we don't get burned by doesn't like dirt. So again, the other thing that we're trying to do with our services is to really follow the person and make our services person-driven. So, what do they say they want to do, and how do we make that happen? And this is a young woman named Sue Austin who's actually uses a wheelchair, and she did this art piece on the freeing or the freedom one gets with an electric chair, and that is actually her scuba chair that she has. There's little propellers on it that she and she actually does take them underwater, and you should check this out. It's really pretty amazing. Her piece on the freedom of chairs. So, you know, where will the people lead you, and you get yourself into some really unusual spots. So one of the things that we look at is, you know, what are people's goals, and you know, what are their dreams and goals? What we create a profile, because again, we want to get at those deal breakers or those dislikes. Doesn't like dirt. And also, you know, what are people's talents and skills? So this is a positive personal profile that Transcend developed, and we use this and this is the crux of our community day services, is to really profile an individual and figure them out. What are they really all about? And this is one of the handouts that is attached, so you can kind of see kind of what that would look like. But this is something that our community instructors are given and told, you know, when you figure this out, we'll start on the employment path. Some people come in, they know themselves really well, they have a world of experience already, so this profiling goes very, very quickly. For others, it's more of an exploration and discovery process where things are going to take a little more time, and we're going to have to try a number of things with them to really determine, you know, kind of what are their goals. But again, be very careful if they come in and you ask them, you know, I want to work in a garden center. Make sure that, you know, you go out and verify that they indeed know what working in a garden center is all about. So what do people need to learn is the other piece. You know, what do you need to know in order to be independent and active in the world, and accepted and valued by the world and others. So what we do is work on all the hard and soft skills that it takes to be an adult in today's world. So this was a little harder to kind of peg. I kept saying, you know, how do we assess and measure, you know, kind of community skills, you know, and where someone's at, because, you know, as I said earlier, the whole world's your oyster. So we started looking at, you know, what do people need to be in the community and in the world, and what are the things that are important for people to learn. So we came up with this assessment tool that we actually really love, because I kept saying to people, you know, we have to be able to measure what we're doing and make sure that it's purposeful and that we're, you know, really having an impact on somebody's life. And I kind of threw it out to my staff and said, you know, how can we do that? How can we measure if someone's making progress in community settings? Because, you know, obviously those services can go on and on and on and on forever if you're not really being thoughtful and purposeful. It just can, you know, you can go in the community for 40 years. So we started saying, well, how do we know, you know, that someone is making progress, and how do we measure annual success? So what we use is this community assessment tool, and we absolutely love it. So we baseline people when they come into the program on these activities, both at home, health and safety, in the community, and social recreationally. You know, do they have friends? Do they have hobbies? And are they friendly? Do they make plans outside of the program? You know, all of those things are really critical to leading an active life. And the other thing that we're looking at is social skills. You know, to be valued and to be in the community, communication skills are needed, and social skills, manners, very important. Managing your behaviors is another thing that we look at. So this is something that we use to kind of assess, you know, what do people need to learn? And you can see it's graded kind of at the top as, you know, 1, the person never does this, or 2, rarely, or 3, you know, sometimes with, you know, some prompting, or 4, they usually do it with just little reminders, or 5, you know, they're doing this completely independently and always do it. So what we're looking at is, you know, do people, you know, when they come in, their goals, their community goals are based on those 1s, 2s, and 3s. We don't focus on the 4s and 5s. We, you know, they're already doing that. So what we look at is, you know, what do they need to learn is the 1s, 2s, and 3s. So this has been really beneficial for really helping us to understand, you know, what do people need to work on and what do people need to learn to be part of the world. But you know, and it also is something that gives us a way to measure. You can see down at the bottom there's an aggregate score. And what we look at is, you know, year to year, does that change? And hopefully it goes up. And those are things that we look at. And the other thing that we look at is their level of employment. And that was a little easier to measure because, you know, was someone employed or not employed? So we looked at creating a 1 to 5 scale for employment. And so 1, 0 is not doing anything vocationally. 1 is, you know, they're volunteering in the community with a lot of support. 2 is they're volunteering in the community or participating in an internship that's unpaid, and they need less support, and they're being, you know, starting to become a little independent in certain functions or are able to focus without, you know, a staff person hovering over them. And 3 is money. So this is where the actual, you know, they're placed in a community employment job with a lot of support. 4 is they're in community employment with less support, so 50% job coaching or less. And then 5 is a very high bar. 5 is they're working to their potential. They are doing they're doing things outside of work with their coworkers. They are, you know, financially stable, and you know, in enjoying their job. So that's a 5. And so on an annual basis, we will plot on a scatter plot their level of employment on one side, and then the other side is the skills assessment and level of independence, we like to say, in the community. So you know, this is, and that is the aggregate score on this thing. And what we found is it's a great little report card. It's a way for people to really see, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we're talking about how to manage community-based services and how to write service plans and community goals. But this is a great little tool, and we love it. And what happens is it really does help us to really focus in on meaningful, what is meaningful for the individual. So this is Anna's life. Anna through our services is employed. She works at the Gap 9 hours a week, earning $14.52 an hour plus stock options. She had so many stock options a few years ago that she had to pull them out because of her Social Security benefits. She had too much money, so she and her mother went to El Salvador, which was really a great thing, and she paid for her mom's ticket. So those stock options came in handy. She also is learning to cook at Project Open Hand. She's learning to peel and use a knife to cut and chop. She's working out and swimming 2 to 3 days a week at 24-hour fitness. And taking a Zumba class. She's learning to clean at Corette House, which is kind of a Ronald McDonald house, because she keeps talking about wanting to move out. So that's kind of one of her long-term goals. And she wants to be more independent in the house. So she's learning to vacuum. She's learning to do laundry there. The other thing that she loves is going to sing karaoke. So, you know, when we help her and her friends, you know, set a date and plan what they're going to do. And she, of course, always chooses to go to the karaoke bar in Japantown. It's hard to get the microphone out of her hand. And then on Sundays, she wanted to go to church. And recently, unfortunately, her mother passed away, and you know, she and her mother used to go. So we were able to connect her with a person in her congregation who now picks her up and drives her, and they've become really fast friends. So they go to church on Sunday, and they actually go out for lunch after. So this is her life. and she's like the mayor of her neighborhood at this point. We've introduced her to all of the shopkeepers in her neighborhood, and she walks down the street. It's like you're with the queen. She knows everybody, and she's waving, and everybody's saying hi. It's just really wonderful. So the thing is as with Anna, when her mother passed on, life's change and needs change, and our services need to be flexible and responsive to people's current situations. And with hourly supports and wraparound braided services, it really is conducive to managing this. So braiding services makes it easy to adjust. So if someone loses a job or starts a job, we can kind of lift them out of the program or put them back into the program, into services. So if they lose a job, they don't have to just sit home and and lose skills. We can kind of pick them up and dust them off and figure out what happened, and we can put them into community-based services and rebuild their confidence and get them back into a job much more quickly. The other thing that we can look at is seasonal fluctuations. So maybe their employment is very busy during the summer or the winter, and not so much in the other part of the year. And what can we do either in a non-work or a second job is looked at. The other thing that we look at is personal situations. As I mentioned, we have a few people whose parents are aging, and they're not able to care for them or get them into the community any longer. So we use our services to respond to those situations. Or medical situations. We've had a number of people who have had significant surgeries, or and we can get them back into services and rebuild their stamina and endurance slowly by offering kind of these hourly braided services. And then again, as independence increases, what we look at is parsing it back and not providing services. When we start seeing 5s on that skills assessment, we start saying, you don't need us anymore. And then, we can use those waiver dollars and waiver services for someone who does need them. So it really allows us to increase people's independence and to utilize our limited resources for those who need them most. So as independence increases, what we see is services decline. Work. This is Jennifer. She's for the last, I think she's been at her job now for 13 years. She works at Prologis, which is a real estate investment organization, and her hours when she first started were 15 a week, and she's now up to, I think, 28 or 30, 32. And what we've seen is that her need for day services has also decreased. We worked with her on being in the community and learning to make plans with her friends, and helping her to be independent. She was another one whose grandmother, she lived with her grandmother, and her grandmother passed on. And we didn't realize how much her grandmother was doing for her. She was washing her hair, she was doing her laundry, she was packing her lunch. And when her grandmother passed on, Jennifer started showing up with raw chicken for lunch, and she looked disheveled, and her hair was greasy. And so we were able to gun up her non-work services and teach her how to wash her hair at the gym. And we were able to teach her how to cook and pack a lunch. All of these things that she had previously relied on her grandmother to do. And right now she's still receiving 8 hours, I think, of services or a week. And mainly what we're working on is helping her to plan outings with her friends. And a couple of years ago, she came in and we said, what would blow your mind? What do you want services around? What should we do? And because she's really getting good at cooking. She's really getting good at other things. So she said, I want to keep going to Project Open Hand because I love those people and I want to help. So she's going to Project Open Hand not to learn cooking skills, but to actually, to give back and to help. But the other thing she said is, I want a boyfriend. So yeah, so we have Worklink, and now I guess we have LoveLink, because there you got him. There's we said, well, do you have your eye on anyone? And there he is, Bill. So she was, we kind of said, well, you're going to have to ask him out, and you're going to have to, so she asked him out, and they started going out. But Jennifer would create the plan and would tell Bill what they were going to do, and if Bill would never say no. He's a good boyfriend, never said no, and he would, if he didn't want to do it, he just wouldn't show up, and that would really piss her off. So she was getting really mad at him, and we had to work with her on, it has to be a consensus, and you have to do things that Bill likes to do too, and so we had and remind him that you're doing this, because sometimes he'll forget, so we had to work with her to plan things with Bill, and to plan date night is what we call it. So they go out once a week and do something together, which is really, really great. So community-based services, a real world of opportunity. But it's about skill building. Again, it's not just going out on outings. It's not activities or field trips, and it's not pre-described, predetermined by staff. It's about skill building for that individual. So goal-oriented, person-driven schedules, and that are routine. Often people like consistency and like to know, what's on, what their week will look like. So we use weekly schedules, and we'll talk more about this when we're talking about managing community supports. But these schedules are determined and kind of written in stone, so they don't change much unless necessary. So if somebody has a doctor's appointment or dentist appointment or whatever, or if their work schedule changes, that will filter in. But they go to the same places. And again, it's not field trips. What we're trying to do, multiple visits, multiple opportunities. It's so that we can use systematic instruction and teach people skills, and give them, repetitive opportunities to practice those skills. So it's just not a one shot and done sort of situation. It's not just a visit. We're actually going there, to build skills. So this allows us to really use, as I said before, kind of error-free learning and systematic instruction, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in one of the following webinars. And then we also, as I mentioned, we're looking at, how can we measure success in the community? And so what we're looking at is, using task analysis to collect data and that skills assessment form on an annual basis. So community-based instruction is real world experience. It's the most amazing place to teach. Because it's real, and you have real tools, you have real people, and you can really get at. I was doing some service transformation work, and one of the programs that I was working with was talking about how they mock up things, and they have classes, and one of the classes was community safety, and I said, and they teach it inside a room, and I was like, how do you teach community safety in a room? You really need to in the moment get at what is going on, so that people are going to be able to generalize and utilize the skills and not just talk about them. So community-based instruction is the most beneficial aspect, I think, of our support services, is that they are all 100% community-based. We don't teach anything at a desk. Actually, I guess we do. People do go to computer classes and things like that, but it's not a desk at the Worklink office. So the other thing that we look at is really, making it employment focused, and work-based learning is so critical. And this is, again, something hard to teach inside. There's multiple opportunities because you're limited. If you run a facility-based services, you're limited to what you have, what you've built. And in the community, there are no limits, and your options are unlimited. At least in urban areas, sometimes in rural areas. With what we found is that in rural areas, people can get really, really creative and create the opportunities if they don't exist. So we'll talk more about what that looks like in one of the future webinars. So employment-focused work-based learning, and what does that look like, and how do you develop that? And then again, those individualized weekly schedules so that they have repeated practice, and then you can collect data. Are they learning? So this is what one of the schedules looks like for an individual. So you can see on Mondays, Carla works at Buy Right, which is a catering hipster grocery store catering place that has amazing food. And she works from 11 to 2, packaging bulk product, so produce. So she's bagging spinach and arugula and nuts and things like that. And Tuesdays, she goes to the family house, the Correct House, which is again like a Ronald McDonald House, so it's connected to the hospital, and families stay when their sons or daughters are having surgery. And so it has to be immaculate. It has to be, really, really clean. So they learn to sanitize a bathroom, and they learn to vacuum, and they learn to, load a dishwasher and do laundry at the family house. The other thing that Carla does is she works at Project Open Hand in the grocery center, which is where she actually learned the skills she's using at her job. So she's packaging. They get bulk donations, and she's busting it into smaller bags and heat sealing them, and that's exactly what she does for work. And we said to her, you don't have to go to Project Open Hand anymore if you don't want to, because you've learned those skills and you're working. And she said, no, I want to help. Again, she wants to give back, and she feels good. She said, I want to help people who are sick, who want a hot meal. So that's exactly what Project Open Hand does. So you can see that sense of community that develops, and that pride and that feeling of self-worth that comes from volunteering. And again, the purpose of volunteering may shift from skill building to giving back. But as I said, people volunteer for different reasons. On Wednesday, she goes to 24-hour fitness, and she goes on the weekends as well by herself. And then she also participates in the SF AIDS Walk. So that's a clerical job where she's learning to use a computer more. Then on Thursday she works, and then Friday's cooking class where she's learning about nutrition and budgeting and kitchen safety, how to use a knife, how to use a can opener, all of that stuff. And then on Saturday she works. And then you can see on Sunday we make a little suggestion, if something fun is going on, our computer class. The people who attend that are charged with finding something really fun and exciting that's going on in San Francisco, and then we put that as a suggestion on Saturdays and Sundays, so that people don't just sit home. And then if people are interested in doing it, we try to help them to kind of coordinate and okay, so where are you going to meet your friends? And if you're going to go to the Haight-Ashbury Street Fair, where should you meet your friends, and how do you get there? And we can help them to kind of troubleshoot and to develop a plan for actually attending those things. But it's not Worklink. Worklink's not going along, so they do that independently. And it's just like planting a seed. And what we see is it does work, and people, we'll write on people's schedules, call Simon and go out for pizza, and lo and behold, they do. Or sign up for a movie and go see a movie. What movies are playing? And let's look. And help them to kind of make a determination and figure out what time and who might want to go with them. Okay, so this is a staff schedule, and you can see there's a morning and afternoon kind of activity for each person, and some of the people, as I said, are picked up at their home and brought into the program, or picked up at from their family. Some of their families meet the community instructor at a Starbucks or something and do that kind of handoff. And then as you can see, people have office hours to do some of their, develop new community resources, or to do their service plans or data sheets, things like that. Again, the skills that we're really looking at and trying to teach are physical skills, how to drive a wheelchair, how to use your knife, all sorts of things. Street crossing, of course, and telling time, money skills, financial literacy, worth. We had one young woman whose mother gave her a $20 bill every day, and one day she didn't get it, and she came into the program and said, Sarah, Mom didn't give me my $20 bill. And I said, well, do you have any money? And she said, no, I don't. And she didn't give me my 20, and I don't have any money for lunch. And I said, well, get out your backpack, let's look. And I opened her backpack, and there was $435 in there. No 20s, but she had $435, and she thought she had no money. Financial literacy is incredibly important. How to count money, not just make a money transaction. And then also budgeting, phone bills. How much does a phone cost? How much does Comcast cost? How much is rent? How much do you earn? All of those things to give people an idea of what they spend and how to budget money. Math and reading, obviously. Tech skills, how to use a phone, how to use computers, how to use the internet safely, and then navigating, how to get places independently, and then vocational skills. So again, the essential skills that we teach: manners, communicating, even if that's just a smile or a fist bump, making choices, all of that stuff. Conversation skills. You can see many of these things are really critical to being in the community and making judgments and problem solving. We don't, after people learn things, we then start screwing things up and having them fix things so that they learn to take initiative and to, I've done what's next, and to really think for themselves instead of having following direction, which is what unfortunately most people with developmental disabilities are so used to being told what to do. We have to kind of really work on them making decisions, and that's one of the other things that we do is you see teamwork, leadership, and consensus is helping them to understand that it's not my way or the highway, but that you have to kind of work together to kind of come to consensus with your friends. The other thing that we do is get them to listen to people besides just staff people. So we work on assigning a peer leader for the volunteer sites, and this changes each time. And so a person is selected to be the team leader, and they are responsible for getting the assignment. They're responsible for designating who's going to do what on the assignment, and then they're responsible for going back to the volunteer coordinator and saying, that this is what we did, and presenting the group's work. So it's kind of funny, when we first started this, they love to be the team leader, and some of them it just goes straight to their head. And so then we have to work on being a good leader with some of the folks. So it's what we like to say at the volunteer sites is, when we go to the food bank, it's more than just bagging rice. So we're trying to teach those soft skills and that initiative and problem solving, and looking for ways to build that in to the day while we're there. So again, it's not just about bagging rice. So we have opportunities galore to teach social behaviors and really build those bridges and make friends. So we are always introducing ourselves and introducing people, and then getting out of the way. So creating opportunities for people to interact with others, greeting, asking for assistance, all of those things. Again, it's not about bagging rice, and creating opportunities to work with others. So, that teamwork and peer mentoring, and leadership roles, so that they learn to take direction from others, and not just the program staff. The other thing that we use is T-charts to teach and define social concepts and really build a social vocabulary that we can use. So, when we say teamwork, do they know what that means? So we look at, what does teamwork look like and what does teamwork sound like, so that they can see, and we use these T-charts for all sorts of things, respect and disrespect. So, it's a way to discuss, kind of a discussion platform for social constructs or concepts. Like initiative. What does initiative mean? So what does it look like and sound like? So this is what we do with concrete thinkers, is to really kind of help them to understand what these words mean and what these words look like. The other thing that we can do is we can use these to draw distinctions between things. So friends who are boys and boyfriends are very different. And so, you know, what does that look like and sound like to have a boyfriend and to have a friend? Also, yeah, that, as I said before, so that respect and disrespect. And then we can, you know, use these words and they know what they mean and they kind of internalize them. So professional or cooperative, you know, responsibility, all of the things that, you know, we want to build, and so we use these T-charts to teach those. So where do we teach? We, you know, obviously we start with the skills and what are you trying to teach, and then we try to really kind of map the community. What do we have? Where can we get at that skill? Where is that skill necessary or needed? And again, social skills as well as hard skills. Soft skills as well as hard skills. So if, you know, someone needs to learn to tell time, we make them in charge of telling time. You know, if people need to become, if they're a bit of a wallflower, or we'll put them in the food bank is a really rowdy, wonderful place, and everyone's really, really friendly and very social. So we'll put the person there instead of putting them in a library where, you know, they unless of course that's what they really enjoy and they hate being in loud, boisterous places. But we do try and you know, build skills, social skills, with the sites that we go to. We look for consistent opportunities and challenging tasks. So it's not just opportune, you know, this is right next to where the office is and that's what we're going to do. It's you know, it's really looking for consistent opportunities and challenging tasks and a variety of tasks. So we have sites where they can learn food handling skills. We have sites where they can do data entry on a computer, or, you know, process mailings or other filing, or other kind of clerical skills. You know, so really not just being opportunistic. We have a park and rec gardening / greenhouse that we work at. So now if someone says they want to work at a garden center, we don't just run with it. We actually take them out and, you know, this is dirty, it's hot, it's, you know, all of that stuff. And is this what you thought it was? So we don't get burned with doesn't like dirt. So, you know, really being strategic and not opportunistic. It's not just what's next door, but, you know, what kinds of skills are you trying to, you know, do you need to teach and where can you do it? And of course, the other thing that we follow is the Department of Labor guidelines on volunteering, making sure that it's a nonprofit, or that people are paid if it's a for-profit business. And more of a paid internship situation. So, you know, Stacy has informed me that that you can find these guidelines for volunteering on the DDA Employment First website. So take a look at those and be certain that you're not volunteering for for-profit businesses, because that is really frowned upon. Community sites, as I said, there's all sorts of places. You know, the YMCA is more than just a place to work out. We actually have people who volunteer in their child care center, or in their administrative offices, and then we're also, you know, as I mentioned earlier, teaching people hygiene skills, so how to shower, how to wash your hair, apply deodorant, all of that stuff, and then you know, obviously health, working out, and so the YMCA has a plethora of opportunity. And then, as I said, the Ronald McDonald Houses, Correct House for us, has ILS skills, opportunities to teach ILS, independent living skills. So obviously stores and restaurants, you can work on money skills and budgeting. Grocery shopping is a great place to do comparisons and what's, you know, which is more expensive and how much money do you have and all that stuff. Communication, as I said, park and rec, you know, they have all sorts of things. We teach people to play basketball with each other, or tennis in their neighborhoods, or go to the swimming pool in their neighborhoods. They also have classes. They have pottery classes and some other things that we tap. And then, of course, that garden center doesn't like dirt. religious and service organizations. So many people, you know, in rural areas, if there aren't volunteer sites, get involved with Kiwanis or Lions Club or other service clubs to build in those opportunities, or, you know, participate in arranging or doing you know, if there's a big community fair that happens in the summer, getting people involved in planning and participating and throwing that. And as churches, again, are another great place, or synagogues, or mosques, whatever, helping people to connect to faith-based organizations is a great way to connect to the community. And not, yeah, you know, here in San Francisco and in urban areas, you know, San Francisco, I like to tell people we can throw a rock and hit a nonprofit, and we have, you know, 1 million, and for every possible thing, I was making kind of a facetious statement the other day. I told people, you know, if we probably have a weasel rescue center, you know, and you just, if you go out and look, you can find anything. In urban areas around nonprofits, and really focusing in on, you know, what are people's interests. You know, we have a lot of cultural institutions, nonprofits that people participate with, animals, art, music, education, the whole shebang. Lots of environmental. Obviously, in San Francisco, we're very environmentally conscious. Transportation and safety, again, just you know, getting there is part of the process. So with our services, again, as I mentioned, you know, the big purpose is to do discovery, so building profiles to create meaningful lives and to really target in on employment opportunities. What's the person good at? So this young woman came into the program and said, I want to work with babies. And we had been burned with doesn't like dirt before. So what we did was have you ever worked with babies? And she said, no, but I like them. And so we said, okay, well, let's go see what it's all about to work with babies. So we set her up as a volunteer at the Stonestown YMCA childcare. And supported her with a community instructor who was also supporting people as they worked out. And so the community instructor just rounded and to check on everybody. And so she was working up in the childcare while other people were, you know, using the fitness center. And what she found was she didn't like the crying and the diapering part. So again, this saved us from putting her in a situation, you know, that she, you know, didn't like. So it was an opportunity to really verify, you know, what working with kids was like. So, you know, if we have limited exposure or the person, you know, not enough information to kind of complete that profile, or for the person to really make an informed choice, we use our day services to really go out and explore and verify. And then if there's a big barrier to getting to someone's dream job, we can also look at that. So, you know, if they want to work in a really professional setting and they have personal hygiene issues, we can work on that as one of their goals. So we strengthen employability. Again, this is done through volunteering or work-based learning opportunities. And this is a way to really, you know, develop that work ethic, as I said, and the hard and soft skills. So our volunteering, it's about building skills, and it's also about contributing. And as I said, you know, people tend to stay in and continue to volunteer even after they find employment. You know, we say to them, you were going to build work skills, and you're working now, so you don't have to do that. You know, what other things would you like to do? Many of them continue and say they want to continue because they feel like they're making a contribution and that what they're doing is valued. So again, manners, work ethic, and initiative. So we teach, you know, I am a helper, and people really rely on me and that sense of responsibility, because then people understand what work is all about, and work is different. So that's an important opportunity in community settings. The other thing we teach them is that initiative. So, you know, identifying, I'm done, what's next? Can I help with that? And really taking that initiative and not waiting for someone to come and tell them what to do, because that doesn't happen at work a lot. So, you know, you have to kind of initiate, finding your boss and saying, what's next. Also the sense of responsibility. Let's get the job done. And teamwork, let's do this together, and that whole listening to directions and other things like I had mentioned earlier. So very important. The other thing we look at is teaching punctuality and attendance and attitude. We had this young man told us when he came into the program he wouldn't take direction from women, and he said, one of the things he said was, well, women just don't know nothing. And that might be true, but it's not something that's going to get you far in the work world. So we decided that had to be addressed. So we set him up and he was always late, and he was saying, I just want a job, just give me a job. And we said, well, you need to prove to us that you can get someplace and you can be there on time. So if you come for a month and you're here every day on time, and we worked with him on punctuality, and it took a couple months before he managed to clear that month window. And then when he did, we started looking for employment for him. But and he was also what we refer to as a clock watcher. So you would, it's 3 o'clock, I'm out of here. And we were like, no, you've got 2 more. Let's just finish your job and give that to you've got to clean up, and give the work back to the community instructor, or to the volunteer coordinator. And then the other thing that we made sure was that his volunteer coordinator and his the person assigning him the work, or the community instructor that was working with him, was a woman, so that he could get over that bump. And learn that sometimes women do know something. And he got very good at taking direction, and so we were able to very successfully place him, and so now he just receives job coaching, and he didn't his job wasn't jeopardized by these behaviors that we were able to correct. So we see our direct service, our support, our community support services as a pathway to success. We start in volunteer jobs, and kind of, as I said, doing that exploration and learning skills. And Simon came into our program, and he has autism, and he had very limited conversation ability, and one word utterances maybe, or he would and he would just flap and jump and burble and steal water bottles and a few other things. So we had to kind of work with him on being in the community appropriately, and what did that mean, and help with him on communication skills and social skills. And then he kept saying he wanted to work downtown, and kept pointing at Embarcadero 3, which is one of the big tall buildings, and he wanted to work downtown. So we said, he's going to need to have some professional skills. So let's figure out what that is. So we put him in our project search, which is at the hospital in a very professional environment, and put him in some of the administrative roles down there. And he was able to show us that he had just this amazing train spotter eye, and could really, and we taught him how to use a computer, and he learned very quickly, and was able to, type very, very accurately and very, very quickly. And we taught him how to file. And he worked in the material management department for one of his rotations. And in that rotation, he was pulling expired medicine out of the distribution center and out of the supply rooms. And he was in one supply room, and the manager said, well, this is going to take him the entire rotation, because it was a big room, and he was done in a week. And the manager came back in and was kind of angry and said, well, I can't just, he can't finish that fast. And he said, I can't just throw those bags of things away. He said, I'm just looking at that. There's a catheter in there that's like $500. And if that's not expired, if it is expired, yes, it has to go. But if it's not, then, that's $500. And he said, so the job coach said, well, I'll go through and look at everything, and did. And 100% of the stuff in the bags was expired. And so he went back to the manager and said 100% of the stuff is, and so the manager said, well, he couldn't have done it that fast. He must have left stuff on the shelf, and Jacob's coming, and we need to make sure that everything is off, and he must have skipped shelves. And so job coach said, all right, all right, all right, I'll go back. And he said I was coaching him. He was, doing it. And so he went back and checked all the shelves, 100% accuracy on the shelves as well. Nothing left that wasn't expired. So then the manager came back and said, well, I'm going to go to the union and make a job for this guy because this is amazing. And he said, and he could just take care of our supply closet. So we were really excited because it was going to be a nice, 20-hour week nicely paid position. And so we went to Simon and we're all excited about it. He said, nope, nope, downtown. So we went back to the material management guy at Kaiser and said, he doesn't want your stinking job. And he, will you write him a reference letter because we're taking him downtown? And he said, sure. And so we worked with him, with Simon on hygiene too. He would wear ripped T-shirts and 2 pairs of pants and things like that. So we started taking him downtown for lunch and started showing him, people wear button-down shirts and ties. We also started working with him on social skills and initiating conversations and greeting people and things. And one of the things that they taught him at Kaiser was when you go into the elevator, members and patients go first. And if you're wearing a badge, they require that you hold the elevator door. And so we taught him to hold the other elevator door and say, ladies first. And so that always got him, smiles and kudos. And we took his letter of reference from Mike, the manager in Material Services, and we went into a law firm in Embarcadero 3 downtown in the place that he wanted to go, and we said to them, this young man wants to work in a professional office, and these are the things. We gave him a potential task list of things that we thought Simon could really help with, and we said, chances are you're probably using your paralegal staff to do many of these kind of set up, button up things, and we gave them a cost savings analysis that showed what it cost to use paralegals or lawyers for this entry level clerical work that we were kind of presenting. And the manager said, this looks wonderful. Why wouldn't I do this? And yes, my paralegals were just complaining that they didn't have enough time to work with, the clients that we serve. So she said, bring him on in. So we brought him in, and of course he has significant autism still. And so she was, I think she wasn't expecting someone with autism, and we hadn't sold him as being someone with autism, and she was, kind of surprised, I think, and curious, but she was also a little leery. So we were getting that, I'll talk to the staff, about this, and I'll present this. And I said to her, it wasn't going the way I wanted it. So I said, well, Simon, will you show Simon what legal filing looks like? Because, he's not done legal filing before, and, can you show him and how you do it? And she said, sure. So she, kind of on her way, taking us to the door, I think, was these are our files. This is we're Walmart lawyers, and she starts going through the files and showing him, and he reaches in and pulls out a file and he hands it to her and he says, mistake. And lo and behold, it was a State Farm file. And so she started then seeing that, that train spotter eye and that eye for detail, and that, we weren't kidding, that he was a filing machine. And she started seeing the value, and she kind of was kind of warming up to the idea. And then he kicked it over the goalpost by running ahead of her and holding the door open and saying, ladies first. And she looked at him, and she turned around, she kind of looked at me, and she said, wow, the lawyers around here could learn something from this young man. And so she hired him, and she started him out 10 hours. I think he started out at 10 hours doing some very, very simple things. And he is now, called upon by the, the lawyers in the firm to put together trial binders. He's scanning and uploading documents into case records. He's doing all sorts of things. He's working for HR. He's, all sorts of things, and they absolutely adore him. And his hours have increased. He's now, and he's working. And they've given him raises. The company moved, and they had boxes all over the place, and case records that were, 7 or 8 boxes of documents. And they were trying to pull these together and consolidate them. And he was so beneficial in doing doing that and finding these, like, they basically gave him a list, and he would, he was like a machine, and he would just run through the office finding these boxes and putting all these cases together. And then we taught him how to set up the offices, and he went in on Saturday on the day that they moved and helped them to set up desktop stations for everybody. So just plugging in keyboards and computers, and so they gave him $1,000 bonus check for being so helpful, and we it made his mother cry. So he's still getting day services. We're still working on his communication skills. We're still working on hygiene issues and stuff. And he's still going to POH. He went Project Open Hand because he's learning to communicate there. We're working on his communication skills out in the community. And then he goes to the gym and has lunch with his friends on Saturday. So all about building community, connecting people to their friends, their neighbors in the world is what we like to say. Again, it's about being accepted, respected, and valued. There's Simon with his coworker Andrew at the Giants game, eating garlic fries and drinking beer. So it's not just about physical proximity to people without disabilities. It's about really being valued by society and by your community. So again, we look at building friendships. What does that look like? So teaching people to reach out and hang out, how to be a good friend, how to use your cell phone, how to throw a Super Bowl party, how to have your friends over to play video games, bowling leagues and basketball, and then of course always going to work events. And again, it's about building people's villages, and so it's based on their interests, their hobbies, and their values. So we focus on the person's neighborhood or where else they go. Where do they work, church, all that stuff again, and really facilitate connections and friendships in these locations so that they get to know people's names and people get to know their names. And that again takes those routine opportunities for people to really engage and interact, because those friendships don't just happen with one single visit. The other thing that we do is we really encourage independence and fade support. But it's not a dump and run, as we say. We really look at hiding in the bushes and small steps. We also use peer mentors and other things, and we really try to look at kind of celebrating when people are independent. We have a wall of fame, we call it, in the office, and it is a bulletin board that says Wall of Fame on it. And we have pictures of people when they go to work. When they start a job, we put their picture up there, and people get, some of our volunteers get into newsletters and other things for nonprofits, and we'll put those up there. Or if someone learns to take the bus by themselves, we'll put their picture up there. So we really celebrate that independence and employment, and also volunteering on that Wall of Fame. So the other thing that we like to do is, we travel train people, and one of the things that we get to the point where we know that they are able to do it, and their family members or their mothers or fathers will say, well, they can't go by themselves. Are you crazy? And we'll say, well, why not? They know how to do it, and we'll videotape them doing crossing the street safely and boarding the bus and everything else. And we work on that. We work on street safety and stranger danger and bus face is what we like to call it. And so when they're really good and we're confident and they're confident, we go and say, okay, it's time. They're going by themselves. And then what we heard was, no, they're not. And the parents said, what if they get lost? And so we started doing this Let's Get Lost, where people are actually, we take them out and we get them lost, and they have to find their way either to the Worklink office, or they have to look at how do I reach out for assistance and let people know where I am, who do I talk to. We also do disaster training. So if there's a massive earthquake, and there is no transportation, what would you do, and what's the Red Cross? And so we use that Let's Get Lost for all those purposes. And what we find is that people really enjoy it. It's like a scavenger hunt, and they really have a great time. And they learn to use their phones, and they learn to call the Worklink office and say, I need help. So it's all really important. Or they call their families and let them know. We also make sure that they have a card on them so that they can let people know where they're at. So it's really important to really teach people that problem solving. There was an organization here in the city that didn't, and one of the people in their provider in San Francisco that didn't, and one of their people ended up missing his BART exit and staying on the train because he didn't know what to do, and he rode to the end, which was an hour outside of town, and he got out because they kicked him out of the train, and he just sat on the corner, and nobody, the BART agent saw him, but at first thought he was, kind of waiting for somebody to pick him up, and didn't really think about it. And he came the next day, and the guy was still sitting on the curb, and he thought, well, maybe he's homeless, and he didn't go over there that day either. So the third day he saw him, he finally decided that he needed to go over there and see if that guy was all right, and then realized that the person had a disability. So for 3 days, as you can imagine, the provider and the family and everybody else was beside themselves, thinking the worst. So we said, that's never going to happen to our people, and we're going to teach them problem solving and how to reach out and ask for assistance and how to call people and let them know where they're at. So that's where Let's Get Lost came in. So the other thing that we're looking at is self-advocacy and supported decision-making. People don't want to be programmed. They want control. So we really look at advocating and saying what they like and what they don't like and making choices. And then the big reminder is people learn to speak for themselves when others listen to them. So if they talk and talk and talk and nothing happens, they're going to stop talking. So really, when someone says they want something, we actually have another bulletin board in the room or in the office that's called Blow Your Mind, and we have them pin up things that they want to do or things that they think would be really fun, and help them to kind of determine what their services are going to look like. And again, we always are asking and letting them make little choices around what they're doing and their days. Try to build choice into everything. So increasing self-confidence, giving them opportunities to be the team leader, and for problem solving, that Let's Get Lost really does give them confidence to be in the community. We look at, using checklists and printed schedules and whiteboards to help people self-direct themselves, and really building in that self-determination and self-monitoring. They are the ones that are kind of collecting data on how they're doing, not the community instructor. So again, it's not all sunshine and roses. It is challenging to do community-based services, and we'll be talking about some of these challenges in the next webinar. So scheduling, how do you do that? How do you manage community-based teams? It's a constant flux, and the other thing is you have no control out in the community as to what's going on and what's going to happen. But that's kind of the beauty of it. So really utilizing those opportunities to teach, teach in the moment, and we teach our instructors to do that. Transportation and other logistics can be really complicated, as you know. And then, as I mentioned before, the accounting and tracking of these hourly services can be a little more laborious than checking a box if someone shows up. So, but again, it gives you that flexibility. It allows you to be really, it makes you more accountable. It certainly does, to the individuals and your funders, because you can't just, check a box and spend 3 hours in a park. It's not going to work. So what happens is participants get really demanding when they start realizing that they have control and that they're in charge. So all the activities must be meaningful, and if they're not, we hear about it. Or if they decide that they don't like to do it anymore, they'll tell us now. So yeah, managing community-based teams, there's lots of logistics, there's lots of moving pieces. So we have a program manager who we like to refer to as the air traffic controller. But it's, yes, it's more work, but it's well worth the effort. So what kind of lessons do we learn? The goal today, again, is the goal is not just to be in the community, it's to connect to it. And that our role as service providers is to really build those villages and be the connector, not the connection. So that we want people to be able to do things without us. and not for us to be seen as as we need to be there for these people to be included or active in their community. So we're teachers, we're not caretakers. So it's not about just being or helping people to be in the community. It's really about building skills. So inclusion is not just being in the vicinity of others, but being respected and valued. So we support people, but teach them to really, drive the bus, so to speak, and give them control of their services and their schedules and what they're learning. Skill building requires structure and repetition. It's not something that happens with just going out on outings. And again, employment is the anchor of a meaningful life. It's hard to do things if you don't have money. And also, that services must be employment focused. Again, that doing something productive and the self-worth that comes and the dignity that comes from work can't be understated. And then again, the money that you earn really does help you do the things that and can change your life. And our goal is to really help people make sure that if they do go to work, that their job does change their life. Services must be person-centered and always include work and non-work services. So this is my stuff. We have about 15 minutes left to take questions or if there are any, please.
We do have questions, Sarah. Thank you. Great information. And before I get to your questions, we had a number of questions about the handouts. So again, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a control panel. About 3/4 of the way down, there's a tab that says handouts. If you click on that tab, you are able to download and print out the handouts, including this PowerPoint. The handouts will also be in an email that goes out to all participants that registered for this webinar. And there was also a question about the recording. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the DDA website probably early next week. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it all or you'd like someone else to watch it, you can do that. So Sarah, I'll go through some of the questions, and it's possible that you may be touching more in depth on some of these in your other 2 webinars, and if that's the case, you can go into that. In the very beginning, you talked about your small groups, your 1 to 3 small groups. How do you go about building those groups? Do you have, I think the question is all 3 from the similar ability or 1 from each ability? So you had, you talked about your agency supporting in
a third, and a third,
right?
Yeah.
So when you're building your individual groups, are you pulling from each of those thirds, or how do you determine your small groups?
Yeah, definitely. We make sure that group is manageable, because if you had 3 people who needed a significant amount of help, it would be really difficult. So I know there's a lot of programs in the nation who kind of specialize in working with people with the most significant disabilities, and one of the things that we often talk with them about is really mixing that up a little bit, because it's hard to get out in the community if everybody needs 100% intervention and 100% support. So we talk to them about kind of mixing it up a little bit and getting some referrals from people who have less significant support needs, so that they can create kind of that balance. And we typically will start, and this is something we can talk about during the management one, but we'll typically start with the people that are get the people oriented who are in that independent third and in that moderate third. We'll get them started and then get them really rolling at a site, and then bring in the person who has more significant disabilities, so that the community instructor can safely and effectively balance the needs of the individuals in the group. So yeah, we do pay a lot of attention to is this a manageable group?
And are you able to share what electronic database you're using to document the hourly service delivery, or is there some mechanism that you use for that tracking?
I will definitely, when we're talking about management, I will share some of the billing way that we track the billing. It's attendance and it's hours of attendance. The actual billing form is an online system that is connected to our regional center, so I can't necessarily share that, but I can show you how we track, you know, and document daily notes, daily progress, and daily hours, and then how the program manager pulls that together. That will be part of the managing community-based services.
Great, thank you. And the assessment tool for community skills, there was a question just clarifying that this is not, this does not have a copyright, that people are able to use this. And
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
just want to be sure.
Go ahead. Yep. Yeah.
It's all yours,
and make
guys.
make it your own. You know, that's one of the things that I did is I shared it with United Cerebral Palsy program in Cleveland, and Paul, the executive director there, was like, Sarah, can I love this thing. I love it. But can I just say one thing? And he said, 111111111. And he said, you know, all of the people we work with have significant support needs, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he said, you know, they're not going to be gunning for independence. And so I actually have one, and I'll share that with you, that he and I came up with for self-reliance. So, you know, and what we did is we shifted the skills that we were looking at, and it's, so he has one now that really just looks at increasing self-reliance versus, you know, making someone completely independent in the community.
Sure.
So I'll share that when we talk about the how to manage community services and how to set that up. But yeah, please use that assessment tool. We absolutely love it for setting goals, and it really makes for meaningful goals, because you're really focusing in on, you know, what do they need to know, and, you know, what don't they know at this point. So it really is a great tool. And then, as I said, we can really see if our services and supports are being effective, because we, you know, hope to have progress year to year.
Thank you. There's a question asking if you could potentially address toileting issues in the community in your next couple of webinars, or maybe people that have some more medical needs, things
Right.
like that, personal care.
Will do. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question that I'm seeing here. Do you see this training being useful to the staff at day programs, not just upper or middle management?
Completely. I mean, one of the things we try to do at Transcend is to get down to, you know, the direct service level, and you know, I think this would be really beneficial to really change people's mindset about what going out in the community is supposed to, you know, the results of that. And I think that, you know, I think it would be a great way, you know, to show anybody who's in day services now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I couldn't agree more. This is a great resource, and definitely feel free to use this as a training resource at your organizations. If you can get a group of DSPs, even if they're not day service staff, I would say that this is valuable for anyone that's providing support services to people in community settings. I don't see any more questions. Sarah, perhaps you can just give a highlight of the next two webinars. And I think we have a slide with the dates up, so people have that for their reference.
Oh, yep. Oh, why is it not? I'm trying to advance it. There it is.
There we go.
So yeah, so this was webinar 1, and again, this was to kind of set the stage and kind of chum the water, so to speak. So the next one is going to be Friday, June 15th from 1 to 3 Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to really focus on setting meaningful goals and really measuring success in managing community-based teams and teaching in community-based settings. And the third one, which that's actually how to kind of manage teams on a programmatic level. So as I said, setting meaningful goals and kind of the instruction. How do you teach in community-based settings, and what does that look like, and the kinds of data sheets that we use, and I'll be sharing some of those, and we can talk about some of the logistical aspects of community-based services. Will be part of the third one on July 20th.
Terrific. And just a note that next month in May, we're back to our usual time for our monthly webinars. That will be Friday, May 18th from 10 to 12. And that webinar will focus on supported decision making, which was a topic that Sarah mentioned briefly. So it's actually very timely, and I think it will lend itself to go right into some of the things that Sarah's going to talk about in June and July. I don't see any more questions. Sarah, thank you. This was a real, as you said, chumming the waters. I like that. It's a great way to get kind of an overview and as we go into kind of a deeper discussion. So we're going to end on that note, and we will see you back in, well, we'll see Sarah back in June, but I'll see you guys back in May. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacy.